Does journaling also help with these things?
Yes, it depends on the person, right?
Okay.
And that's why when we teach our courses, we have all sorts of different things. Because for some people, journaling is helpful. For some people, talking is helpful. For other people, experiencing things are helpful. Activity.
Hi, welcome, Mary.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to see you today. We've talked before in our audio interview, but finally we got to see each other today.
Yes.
And I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yes, there's something so nice about being in person with each other.
Yeah, definitely. I've read, we've talked, I've read about what you do, but I really want to, listen from you. Like, tell me about your story, like your journey and, everything.
I would love to. So for me, when I was a young mom, I had 2 young kids and my husband traveled all the time. He traveled overseas, so he's gone for weeks at a time, right? And it was challenging. I'm balancing a career and trying to raise my kids and trying to figure out how all that goes. And I didn't always approach it in the most healthy way. I found sometimes I would lash out, sometimes I would avoid difficult conversations, and I would do these things sort of like not knowing any better. When I was raised as a child of the 70s, my parents, they did the best they could, but we didn't talk about emotion. I didn't understand how important emotions were and regulating those. There was a lot of conflict in my household, a lot of people lashing out, and so that's what I was doing with my family. And when I learned that we have the ability to respond in a different way, and that will affect ourselves, our children, our families, our communities, I was like, wow, that can be transforming. Like, your kids will be different raised in a household where there's not all this conflict, where people understand the importance of emotions. And I didn't necessarily do it all right at that time, but I look back at myself with empathy and I say, she was doing the best she could. And now that I've learned better, I'm like excited about helping other people avoid kind of that morass that I was in for a while, right? So that was lovely. And I worked for a lot of nonprofits. I worked in education, healthcare, all over the world. And I also saw that we would do things for people, help them with education or provide healthcare services, those kinds of things. And that some people would thrive and some people wouldn't, right? And so why were some people thriving with the same skills, right? And eventually, as I moved to Dovetail Learning and learned more about resilience, I'm like, that's the ticket. That's the key that can make the difference between whether we're thriving or whether we're struggling, and whether we have these deep conversations and be our authentic selves or not. So that got me really excited about learning more about resilience. And
once we talked 2 weeks ago, I started observing it more. I was like, okay, that's how we are, or that's how that person is. But now I'm like, oh yeah, I can see people bouncing back.
Yes.
Some people bouncing back quicker than others, right?
Yes. Well, and I will tell you that a lot of people think of resilience as just the ability to bounce back, right? And that's an important part of it, for sure. But we consider resilience so much more. So resilience is awareness and mindsets and skills that help us be our best selves in our family, community, world, right? So it's at a much deeper level than just the ability to bounce back. It's anticipating things, saying, oh, I'm going to go into that hard thing. What am I going to do about that before I go in? How am I going to help myself and help what's going to happen because of that? Just an example. So my mother had a fall last December, and she had Alzheimer's. We knew she was declining. I got the call. I was in a dressing room, trying on clothes, which I hardly ever do. And I'm like, okay, I have to go to the emergency room. What am I going to do? And it's like, do some breathing mindfully. Let's think about what I need to do to prepare before I rush into that situation, right? Because it's going to be super conflictual. Between, my mother and my family and the doctors, I'm going to have to navigate a lot of people. So by being able to, now I did some practical things like make sure I had water before I walked in and that kind of stuff. But also anticipating myself, that when I could go in there, it was very hard. My mother had broken a compound bones, and she's, screaming, and, the people are trying to help her, but I could be calm. And I'm like, Mom, let's breathe together. She would thrash at us, let's just do some breathing, right? And we'd breathe mindfully together. And also just noticing my own emotions and noticing others. I was using these resilient mindsets in a really stressful situation. It's not bouncing back, but it's resilience at a deeper level, right?
Yeah.
And that, understanding how to do that, that's how we thrive, right?
Okay.
Or in a conflictual situation, right? So I broke my toe a week ago, and we were on a trip, so we came home, we were unpacking, and I'm tired, and I'm hot, and it hurts, and my husband wanted to eat something, and I just lashed out, because that was one of my protective patterns. That was just something I resort to when I'm not careful, right? Yeah. I stepped away. Oh, that's not my best self. Take a deep breath. Have empathy for myself. Oh, she's in pain. And then have empathy for them. Like, they're dealing with this cranky woman. And then I could go back and be a more cheerful person. Right? That helped everybody.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the kind of resilience we're talking about, right? That you can, in all these situations, we don't know what life's going to throw at us, but being able to anticipate things and being able to just have a deeper level of being grounded, a deeper level of being able to have relationships with people at a strong level, more authentic, and being able to collaborate. Those are the deeper things that we're talking about.
So we are, as I understood, that we all have it.
Yes.
It's in us.
Yes. And that's why we call the approach We Are Resilient. Because we want to celebrate that we are all resilient. We're here today. Yay, you and I are talking. Everybody who's listening, yay, you've made it through a lot of things in life already. Yeah. Celebrate that, right? And by being intentional, we can strengthen it. That's the big message. Like, it's not something like, and it's also not just a checkbox. Like, oops, I've done this, now I'm going to be resilient, everything that happens is going to go well. I just gave you an example of, like, even though I'm doing this training, sometimes it doesn't go well, right? It doesn't go well. Yeah. And it's a lifelong journey. But by being intentional, like knowing what we're striving for, knowing where we want to go, we can do it. We can become a better self. So.
And it's across all ages, right?
Like, it's across all ages. This is universal. It applies to all of us, whether we're 5 or whether we're 85. We have all sorts of ages in our trainings, and it's been really fun to work with people and see how, a woman who's like 80 and her husband has cancer and metastasized through his body. So she's what a big challenge she has, right? And she is talking to other people and using our skills to try to help navigate how she is both a wife and a lover and a mother and also his caregiver. And how can she navigate all those roles in a way that brings out the best for her and the best for him, right? Just an example. Or, with teenager in our training is trying to deal with, feeling excluded from the softball team, right? Yeah. And what does that feel like when you don't get chosen? And how do you handle the navigation with your friends? What resilient mindset might help you, right? Maybe it's the resilient mindset of curiosity. Maybe it's noticing my emotions. Like being aware of our emotions is so important. Yeah. And trying to figure that out. That's one of the skills that we talk about.
Yeah. So it's good to have a conversation with yourself. That's what right? That's mostly what it is, right?
It's all about making our own choices and understanding who we are and what's working for us. So for some people, resilience is a dirty word, right? They don't like it because it makes them feel like people tell you to be resilient. Well, the system should change, or I'm tired of, being resilient. I just want to be X, right? And for us, we understand that people can have those feelings, and we try to emphasize this is only for you. Yeah. Only you get to decide if that choice is working. Like when I lashed out at my husband about the bread, which was silly, but maybe I would have decided, maybe it was a different situation, I would say that's what I needed to do at that time, right? Just in another example, these are all about our protective patterns, but one of them is avoiding. So when my mother had Alzheimer's, we got all these family texts, like day after day of various crises and things that she needed. Yeah. And sometimes I just put the phone away. I'm going to avoid it right now. Well, that's a healthy avoiding, because I needed to get other things done.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be healthy if I did it for, weeks, but maybe for that time. So I get to decide what's working for me, right? And whether those protective patterns are helpful or not. And that's why it's important. That's why, like you said, it's self-awareness and making choices. So we have 3 resilient mindsets.
Okay.
One of them is the power of choice, and understanding that when we understand that we can choose how we respond, when we choose what skills to use, then we are leaning into the resilient mindset of choice, and it helps us throughout, whether it's our patterns or skills, it helps us understand our resilience a lot better, right? Another resilient mindset is curiosity. So we're like, oh, like after I lashed out at my husband about the bread, I stepped away and go, oh, why did I do that? I think because I'm hot and tired and I hurt. So maybe just take a deep breath and do a little breathing mindfully and then go back into that situation. So being curious instead of like kind of ignoring it or... And we can do that with each other. Like, be curious about, oh, you had that? Can we talk about your feelings? What's happening with you right now? Right? Or if you can't even have that conversation, you can still be curious in your mind, like, oh, maybe mom lashed out because her foot hurt. So that's probably what my kids were doing, right? Instead of like blaming me, they probably said, oh, I wonder if that's what's happening, right?
So what happened after, like, once they were quiet when you left? So
they
probably got it. Okay.
Yeah, they understood, right? So that's using the resilient mindset of empathy and saying, wow, mom's probably not in a great place. So we're just going to let that slide and keep going, right?
I also think, like, the way you're saying it, I feel like it's never going to be perfect for anyone, right? There's going to be ups and downs.
That's right.
Different circumstances, and it's going to keep changing, right?
That's exactly right. Like life.
It's like one issue with another or something, But then I think before reaction, if we all give time, do you think that's important?
Oh, yeah.
We have time to
So one of the skills we talk about is noticing myself. Okay. And our little tagline that goes with that is pause. What's the cause?
Oh wow. That's interesting.
So, I'm doing this. What's going on? Like that's using the resilient mindset of curiosity, like you said, pausing. Pausing are huge things. They're like a gift we can give ourselves and other people. When I'm in an argument with my husband, sometimes I pause and I move into the centering skill of finding gratitude. And I go, what am I grateful to him right now?
To kind of move away.
Yeah. Just inside, like he's talking and I can just like, what am I grateful for? And then I don't have to snap back at whatever he's saying, right?
Because you're not responding.
Yes. Well, I'm responding instead of reacting. Right? Reacting is when I use my protective patterns and just what comes naturally. Responding is when I'm more careful and I'm thinking, what's actually going to work for me here? Yeah. And I have that choice to do that. Another resilient mindset we talk about is courage. And that's the courage to be aligned with our values, right? So like my value, for example, when I was lashing out about the bread, one of my values is to get the food in the refrigerator because I think it's important to take care of food and I don't want to throw it away, right? So I was trying to worry all about that and my husband was doing something else. And so I lashed out, I stepped away and I go, no, but my higher value is to maintain a good relationship with my husband and my children and to not lash out when it's really not deserved. So that's being in line with my values and saying I didn't use a little courage because the reality is it's hard. If it was easy to always do the right thing, we would all.
It can be hard. So giving it time.
Yes.
Like thinking about, but sometimes somebody else is asking a question and you're getting they want something instant.
Absolutely.
Now it's like, what do you do?
So I'll give you an example. So I mentioned a little bit about our protective patterns, right? So these are the patterns we usually learned when we were kids, and this is how we react to things naturally. And we have named 6 of them, right? And that's the first part of our book talks about these protective patterns. 6 of them, they're distrusting, hypervigilance, hyper-caretaking, avoiding, defending, and attacking. And most of us have things that we do naturally. So you've just heard a couple of my stories. You can imagine I'm attacking. And that's
so that was like the last step, right?
Yeah, that's just, well, and it's just the...
So it's
just,
not in order.
No, it's not in order.
Okay.
I just remember them in a particular order.
Okay.
But that's what I tend to do when I get under stress.
Okay.
And it can be a small stress, like my husband can ask me about an IT question when I'm trying to work on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can be a big stress, like my mother's in the hospital, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have to use other skills because I don't now sometimes, like I said, it can be helpful. All of our protective patterns, we call them protective because they give us a reactive resilience.
Okay.
And it's important. We all know situations where it's helpful to, sometimes we have to be the attacker, sometimes we have to be the avoider, and that's how we stay protected, right? But we also know situations where we use them where it's not helpful.
Too much, too fast. Right?
Exactly. So learning to notice, oh, was that good? Oh, no, maybe I'll try something else. And then making a different choice, like I said, using resilient mindset of choice. That's where we start moving into really strengthening our resilience, when we're noticing our protective patterns and saying, I'm going to make a different choice. Or I'm making the same choice, but I'm doing it with thought, like this is the right choice for me and my situation right now. Yeah.
So some of the things that we do naturally, but now you have a lot of research done. You're basically relying on all this research,
That's
which
right.
you probably
That's
did,
right.
and there must be some scientific
There's a lot of
research.
evidence behind all of our
all of
work.
that.
Yeah,
Okay.
lots of evidence. In fact, we have some materials on our website that gives all the citations for all of the skills that we practice. Yeah, exactly.
So,
and a lot of times people are aware of the flight, fright, or freeze. Like, oh, you're in a stressful situation, your cortisol goes up, and I'm in a flight, fright, or freeze situation. That's the same as our protective patterns, but it's hard to recognize that. But it's much easier to say, oh, I'm attacking or I'm avoiding, right? So we're trying to name them in a common way so that we can recognize that about ourselves and decide whether it's working. Exactly. We're trying to hardwire our brain to think a little bit differently.
So basically, creating a new vocabulary, right?
Yes.
So you can quickly go to it.
That's
right?
exactly right. Exactly. We can notice things and we can talk about it with other people. Like talk about it with my kids. We had, whole discussion like, what do you think your protective pattern is and how is it coming out and how is that evolving, right? Over time, we can do that with the people that we care about, whether we're teachers or doctors or in their helping positions or whether we're just caregivers or family or friends, we can talk about it with people. It's really helpful. Yeah.
And if everyone understands it, it's going to be a beautiful world, right?
Well, it will help, right?
Yeah, it will definitely.
Life is a journey.
Yeah.
We never know what's behind each door. And that's the reason we really think it's so good to strengthen our resilience, so that we know when the door opens, no matter what's behind it, we have the skills to reach into it.
We have the skills.
Yeah.
We are, ready for it,
That's
right?
right.
Whether it's good or not too good, but we're ready for it.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah.
Anytime you felt, I know you told me the lunch, the bread situation, but anytime you felt like, this is a challenge or something.
Oh, I mean, I feel like the last 6 months have been nothing but challenge, right? And I'm like, good, I'm writing the book on resilience because the universe has decided to throw it all my way, right? I mentioned that my mother had the fall and she had Alzheimer's. Well, she passed away in February. So there was a lot, with that. And then after that happened, we have to clean out the house. We have to sell the house, divide up all her belongings, lots of family interactions around all of that, right?
Yeah. And this was all happening while you were writing the book.
Of course, we were finishing the book. Exactly. So that's happening all at one time, right? My husband actually has a lung infection, so we're trying to deal with that. There's work challenges, both for his work and for my work. My daughter has challenges, right?
Yeah.
Every time you pick up the phone or somebody comes, and I'm like, oh, something else, right? And then, like I said, and now I have a broken toe, right? So a lot of challenges coming my way.
So it's like. You're spreading the knowledge.
Yes.
But you're also being tested on that knowledge at the
Absolutely.
same time, right?
Because we all are, right? And that's why we consider this so important for everyone. It's universal.
Yeah.
This is not just for your friend who's like maybe her spouse just died. This is not just for the child who's suffering for anxiety. It can be helpful for those too. But even those of us who feel like our life is going pretty well, we do not know what the next door the next door holds, right?
Yeah.
And so understanding that and being ready for that is super helpful. Just another example back to my toe, right? So we're supposed to go on a big trip in 2 weeks, right? We're traveling, and my brother Everett is like, what are you going to do? I'm like, well, right now I'm on the assumption that my toe is going to be a lot better and things are going to go well. It might not. And I might get grumpy. But the reality is worrying about it right now is not going to help.
It's gonna,
right? And that's one of the things I've learned, like let it go. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about things that we can't do anything about. That's one of our centering skills, is letting go. And then if it happens, I'll deal with my emotions at that time, right? Because thinking I'm going to be unhappy doesn't actually make me less unhappy. Right?
Just at least you're focusing on the moment right now.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Right now, I'm joyful that I can walk around some, and that I'm doing okay, and it doesn't hurt too much, and yay. Yeah.
And that goes hand in hand, and like focus on the moment, right? Like,
Exactly.
Don't worry about the past or the future.
Yes.
Stay in the moment.
Mindfulness is a large part of resilience, right? So it's a large part of what we do. I would say learning social emotional skills are also part of resilience, right? And that's learning how to regulate ourselves. Like I gave you an example of when I was not regulated and when I learned to regulate, right? And also learning cultural issues and being able to navigate those. Those are a whole type of resilience called cultural resilience that we also talk about in our book, because the things that we've learned from all those cultural patterns in our life, they shape so much of what we do and how we respond and how other people. So much of conflict happens because we think everybody should have the same view that we do. And when we understand, oh, they have a different view, and we can navigate that, it really helps us navigate conflict from a position of strength instead of a position of fear or anxiety.
So you can deal with the differences in a better way, right? Like
exactly.
with people, or this individuals or friends or family,
That's right.
Yeah, even if you're siblings, you not necessarily have the same thought process.
Different cultural patterns, right? I look at my siblings and sometimes I'm like, wow, they think that. Okay. But understanding they've had different experiences, different things that have taught them what they should be doing and what they shouldn't, and they've learned those things. So, we learn to navigate it together. And understanding that that's a cultural pattern makes me feel less like, oh, I have to change that, or how, makes me more understanding in this. How do they do that? Why do they do that? It helps me have more empathy for people. A lot of our work is revolved around helping people have more empathy, because we all live together in the same world. And if we don't have more empathy we're not getting rid of any of us, right? It's not an option. So learning to live together is a really important part of becoming our best selves.
So you also talked about, how you call it what is it called? Like a self, like being a role model. What's the phrase you use for that?
Yeah, so we talk about practicing the work, right? One of the things the method that we use to share the work is practicing it ourselves. First, we all have to practice it. It's very easy to want to say, oh, that person needs it. Oh, I'm just going to make that person do it. And I have that impetus too, right? I'm walking with a friend. Wow, that friend could really use this. How do I tell them to do this, right? And it's not helpful. None of us want to be told to do anything, really. But the more we practice it ourselves, then people learn from us by watching what we do. And we call that modeling, right? And people are familiar with the kids, right? We know children watch you like a hawk, and they do everything that you do, whether you want them to or not, right? But actually adults do the same thing. We all watch each other and we learn from each other. We say, oh, that person has a way of being. I'd like to be a little bit more like that. What are they doing, right? And so modeling is really the best way of teaching, because when it means we're in accordance with our values, right? When we're telling us one thing and acting in another, like if I tell my friends, don't worry, and I'm sitting here, but what's going to happen here? And she's not going to say, okay, let's not worry, right? But if I show her a different way of looking at things that doesn't involve worry, it's like, oh, you kind of get a sense of that. And then the last part of sharing, we talk about coaching. So it's practice, model, coach. And coach is really asking curious questions like, I'm doing this, would you like to learn more? Right? And how's that working for you? Tell me more about that. Instead of just telling people what to do. Okay. Now, I will admit, I'm human. I like to tell people what to do just like the rest of you. Especially my children and my husband and my friends, right? I just have such good ideas. But I'm working on coaching more and talking less, which means listening and asking questions, right?
That's right. That's always a challenge, right? Yeah. Because we want, like we want to guide others or
and I have
help
such
others.
Wisdom, right? Such wisdom, and really asking the right questions is so much more powerful for people than telling them things.
So you said the practice, model, and coach.
Exactly.
I like that.
Yeah, that's our primary method, no matter what field you're in for sharing this work, right? Is we think practice, model, coach. And that's like, we work with a lot of teachers, and of course, for some teachers, that's almost like, no, I'm here to teach people. I have to give them knowledge, right? And, helping people understand, even in no matter what situation you are, people are looking for what you're doing and more than what you're saying. So show them how to be in the world, and that's what really helps people learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for any profession or even personal, it can work, right?
Exactly.
Practice, model, and coach.
Exactly.
Coaching could be anything. Could just be,
Yeah, you want to learn from people from people who are excellent cooks. Yeah. And half the time it's because you watch what they're doing, right? And then they might ask questions and coach you through it. But, if people just tell you should be a good cook without practicing it themselves, you're not, it's hard to understand.
It's not going to be effective. And same thing you're saying, behavioral patterns too. Like when your friends see you, practice and model it. Then when you coach them, coaching is different from just giving them information. Right? It's like, okay.
Exactly. A lot of it's asking questions.
And so coaching is different from teaching.
That's right. That's right.
A good point. I didn't realize that. Like coaching, you can coach on topics.
Exactly.
But you're not actually teaching, because it's like giving information, but then asking more questions.
That's right.
And that's what helps. That's what works the best.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
That's right. For all this work.
So, starting from a small unit, like a family, and then obviously you can take it to work and.
So we do all sorts of trainings. We train parents who are interested in working with their family. We train whole teams, whether they're healthcare clinics or teachers in schools or people who work in other kinds of organizations. People come as groups, people come as individuals and then take it back to their group. They learn to be coaches in our method and they take it back to their groups. So it works in all sorts of situations.
So basically it's like an immersion kind of thing. Like you immerse in the program, you're doing everything, and then you go back to your organization and you're
that's one way, right? That's how we teach coaches, but we also just do introductions, right? Just an introduction to the material, because for a lot of people, just learning a little bit, wow, I can strengthen my resilience. That's an important thing that a lot of people are not aware of. And as soon as you're now starting to pay attention, right? And then, can I learn more? And that's how many of us are, right? So not everyone has to go through an immersive experience. And as I mentioned, we have this new book that's coming out, and the book helps tell stories about people who've using, whether it's a protective pattern or a cultural pattern or a centering skill or a mindset, how people are using it and how it's working in their own life and what the impact is, as a way of people understanding, this is how it might work in my life, right? So it's easy to read, it's fun, engaging, and I think it really helps lead people to a deeper understanding of what they're doing. I was just talking to a friend of mine who we had just finished our manuscript, so she got an early read of it. And she said, wow, it really helped me notice that I'm like some of the couples in the book, my husband and I, and we have the same patterns. So we were in the middle of an argument, but we were able to resolve it in a deeper way. Because she had just read the book. And then she also took it into she's a teacher, she took it into her classroom and with her colleagues. And she said we were able to approach our curriculum development so much more effectively because I was using some of the skills from the book.
Okay.
So just
you
an
also
example is
use the
helpful.
word centering, right? What is that? What is
So centering is when we ground ourselves, right?
Okay.
And we might do that without calling it that, and we probably do a lot of times. But I mentioned that I had this argument with my husband, and then I took a moment to center, right? Instead of like continuing to attack and say these words about the bread, right? Mm-hmm. I relaxed and okay, that's so I'm just going to center myself, return to my grounded self, right? And so we have 6 skills that help us do that. We talk about those in the book.
Okay.
Everything from noticing myself, pause, what's the cause? Mm-hmm. Breathing mindfully, so we take some deep breaths. Finding gratitude, which is one of my favorite skills. Mm-hmm. Gratitude, there's so much evidence on how that can change us. Letting go. So I also mentioned that centering skill, like letting go, worrying about my toe, and like, I'm going to embrace today. I'm not going to worry about it now, right? I can't do a different thing. Or we also talk about positive reframing. So I have one view of the situation, like another example for my toe. This view of the situation could be, wow, I have to struggle so much. Life is so hard. This is really a pain, right? And I can just walk through life cranky, and my poor husband and family will be, and all my colleagues will like not want to be around Mary. Or I can say, wow, there's a lot of people with worse injuries and worse that are going through life, what we call disabled, the construct of disability, and they're doing amazing things. Like, just because I'm having trouble walking with there's people with wheelchairs. I have good friends who are in wheelchairs, and it gives me a new appreciation for them. I have been given this gift of 6 weeks of new appreciation, right? That's a positive reframe on the same event. And I can say, wow, now I can see how powerful and strong those people are. Like, we need to bring them into the workplace. We need to do more for them because they are so inventive and courageous. Not all of them, they're human beings. Yeah. But a lot of people can do a lot more than we give them credit for because they can't hear as well as we can, or they can't walk as well as we can. It gives me a whole different perspective, and I've been given this gift, so I can look at it that way. Wow. Right? That's just an example of a positive reframe, right? Yeah. And the more you practice, we talk about micro-practicing, giving us our little small examples. Then when something happens, we're ready to use the skill. Oh, I broke my toe. How can I positive reframe it? Not in the moment. In the moment it hurt, and I needed to ice it. But over time, I can move into that and use that centering skill to return to my better self, right? And then the last one is nurturing myself. Like, we need to nurture ourselves. We can't expect to function without taking care of ourselves. And society doesn't teach us that. Oh, just keep going, whether you're trying to take care of your kids or your parents, whether you're trying to work or all that, just keep going. And we need to play, we need to get enough rest and sleep, we need to take care of our emotions, we need to have our social contacts. Just like we don't expect a phone to work. We wouldn't throw it across the room because it wouldn't work, we would plug it in. And yet sometimes we emotionally throw ourselves across the room because we can't do what we expected to do when we haven't taken care of ourselves. So that's our 6th centering skill, and I'm very passionate about it because I think so many people expect too much from themselves and don't take care of themselves in the way that would be so helpful. So
take care of yourself physically and emotionally.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Physically, emotionally, spiritually. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. All of that. Very important. And you're giving a gift to your whole family and all your colleagues by taking care of yourself. Again, it's a cultural pattern. Some people learn, no, you have to take care of everyone else. Don't take care of yourself. It's selfish. Like, a lot of people learn that. Yeah. And so to unlearn that is challenging. Yeah. But I think it helps us build our resilience when we,
So there is a process. Like, I can see that, something's happened in anyone's life, and all these emotions or things come, right? If it's injury or whether it's someone else's injury or something else.
That's right.
But now there's a process.
That's right.
It's like and there's vocabulary to it. So I'm doing this right now.
Exactly.
I'm doing this right now. Otherwise, it's like learning a sport, right? There's a vocabulary to that.
Learning a sport is the same, and we have to practice.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't just say, you send you out to the basketball team, the NBA, and expect, oh, why isn't she making baskets? She's, we'd be like, let's start with the basics and practice that a while, right?
Yeah.
So I gave you an example of the positive reframe around my foot. Most people can't do that right off the top of their head. Some people can, they've already learned it, whether they named it that or not.
Yeah.
But some people can't. And learning to do it on a small level, then as they build it up, then when the bigger things happen, they're ready.
Yeah.
Right?
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can clearly see that if there is a process which is like, it's like a, easy steps.
That's right.
Then I know I'm going to go to that step. Now this will work for me. This won't work for me.
Exactly. That's why we have a framework. We call it the framework.
Framework
that we have in our heads, or we have posters in the books, whatever. The framework to lay it all out, and then you can make choices and you can try different things. And when we do our training, we try different things each week, and then we talk about how it worked for people.
Yeah.
Right?
And not everything is going to work for everybody.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Some things are important, and also some people already do things, certain parts of it super easily. So sometimes it's like, oh, I want to add more. Like maybe you're already great at finding gratitude. What else can I do? Because it's nice to have a menu that you can choose from. They're not all going to work, right? Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. It's like I would say like you're getting your ammunition ready when you need to use it, right?
That's exactly
like
right.
Whenever you need to use any of these skills.
That's exactly right.
Or if you're playing a sport, then you need to know all the different things, right?
Exactly.
To be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes so much sense now. It's
Yeah.
pretty clear.
Excellent.
But definitely, I'm going to spend more time. But and you said practice, model,
and coach.
That's right. That's actually resonates with me more now, because I was initially looking at resilience as just bouncing back, but it's much more than that.
Much more than that.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I haven't, I've talked about some things. There's a whole part of the approach is not in the book, because the book is already long enough. So the second book we'll have. Okay. And that's when we're talking about our connecting skills. How do we connect with each other at a deeper level, right? And we talk about empathy. We talk about choosing kindness, heartfelt listening. Those are all connecting skills, speaking authentically, right? And then we also talk about the skills to make groups work better, right? Everything from appreciating others. That's like the WD-40 of groups, right? You pour appreciation in, and it's amazing. I had the last training for one of my coach groups this week, and everybody has to teach back. And one smart person chose to do appreciating others, and she said, okay, we're going to take turns putting appreciations in the chat for each person in the room. Everybody's just smiling for like 20 minutes, right? Because there's all these positive, yes. And it's not a magic solution. If you haven't done some of the other work, it's not good, but it really does help.
It makes them like, I don't know, they listen to you.
Yeah.
They understand that, whatever my skill is or whatever my thing is not unnoticeable.
Oh my gosh. I was a Girl Scout leader for 12 years, and my girls, at one point I was like, oh, you get, gold star for this, or gold. There was no gold stars. It doesn't matter. It was just saying I appreciated what they were doing. And they loved it. They loved it. People like to be appreciated, right?
They contribute better because they're happy, right? So they
exactly.
And they feel like they're appreciated for what they're doing.
Exactly.
Or their qualities, or, some people.
And we love this model that it has all the stuff I talked about first, but then also these other kinds of skills, because we feel like this is how you really start moving and changing organizations, right? Changing systems and making the change we need at a larger society level. So resilience is not just what is good for me, but it also can help build the world that we need and make the changes that we need. So that really has me fired up. I love that.
Oh yeah. There's a lot to learn from you, Mary.
Thank you.
That's it's so nice that we talked about it today, and it is making me more curious about everything. Right?
Excellent.
So and I think if we all think about it more actively, I think we can
be intentional.
Yeah,
we talk about being intentional, like trying to do things intentionally. It makes all the difference.
Not just doing it, but being that, what did you call that? Mindfulness,
That's right.
If you're doing something,
That's
be mindful that you're doing it, right?
Exactly, right. And a lot of it's just learning to recognize, becoming aware, right? The more we can become aware of how we're acting, reacting, or responding in the world, the more we can respond in ways that work for us and work for the people that we care about.
Yeah. And give it time before responding to anything, right? I feel like people respond too fast to things these days, especially with texting and messaging and all that. Because you're not even thinking about
that's
right?
when the protective pattern of avoiding can be helpful. You just put the phone down, right? You avoid it, and that's why we're saying all these protective patterns can be helpful in different situations.
Yeah, that's
they really can.
So avoidance can also help. It's
Absolutely.
not like
it's a protective pattern for a reason. Exactly.
That's a good point right there. Because I've seen that sometimes people, when they don't like something these days, is quick, like they'll, especially with social media and everything, right? So it's good to have things put away.
That's right.
And then resolve that whatever it is you're going through, right? Whatever the issue is or the argument is.
And that in those situations, a lot of times it's being curious. Why did I have that reaction myself? Why did I want to say that? Like, what's going on for me that makes me feel that way, right? And that's the kind of internal reflection that I did not learn as a child. I did not learn growing up, right? I mean, I didn't see it. So often it's not taught. And I think it's taught a little bit more now, but it makes a huge difference.
Does journaling also help with these things?
Yes, it depends on the person, right? Okay. And that's why when we teach our courses, we have all sorts of different things. Because for some people, journaling is helpful. For some people, talking is helpful. For other people, experiencing things are helpful. Activities, right? There's all sorts of, and our book includes a lot of different kinds of things. Because, journaling is fabulous for people who like to journal.
Like to journal and express, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Instead of putting it somewhere in a social media, better to journal and vent it out or something.
That's right.
Again, I'm just thinking right now.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a lot of interesting and very deep information here.
Thank you.
And I do want to learn more. And that's amazing, Mary, the work that you're doing. And
well, I hope you enjoy our book.
Yes.
So the book is the book is The Heart of Resilience, nurturing your inner strength for a joyful life.
Yeah.
So it's all about learning how to practice this in a way that you can feel more joyful in your life.
Joyful in your life and be a happy soul, right? Yeah. Thanks for joining me, Mary.
You're welcome.
I'm so glad we made it
today.
Me
too.
And we got to talk in detail, and they're obviously learning these skills. It's it's a process, right? You learn. Anyone who wants to learn. It's a process, but it's possible.
That's right.
It's like a systematic process,
That's right. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about anything at all, then you know who to call. Just tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Tell Sanjana. Just tell Sanjana.